We are here with our final candidate today, and she is Kathy McAlpine. She is currently the Chief of Police in the city of Tigard.
Yep.
And here with us today. So looking forward to chatting with you. Thank you for being here in front of the camera and everything.
I don't know if I get to say it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here and have these conversations with you.
I'm Shelby Fritz, HR Director and our moderator for today. I have a great panel of people here with me that will go through a series of questions. I'll start with asking them to introduce themselves, and then we'll just kind of go in order of the questions. Just a heads up that there are 12 questions and 45 minutes in which to answer them.
Okay,
So
read the
challenge-
digest version. Okay.
Challenge accepted?
Oh yeah, definitely.
All right. I will pass it to Marianne.
Marianne Claybaugh, TPD Finance.
Good to see you, Marianne.
Hi, Kathy. I'm CP Taylor, one of the assistant chiefs, and I head up the investigative bureau.
Hi, Chief. How are you?
Hi, Kathy. I'm Lisa Woods. I'm the director of our Office of Equity and Human Rights.
Good to see you again, Lisa.
Good to see you.
Hi, I'm Tanisha Jumper. I'm Director of Media and Communications, which includes strategy and engagement. And I'm going to take off my mask. You already can't hear me. So, hi.
Hi, Tanisha. Good to see you.
Hi, Kathy. Allison Griffith. I serve as the Assistant Director for the Neighborhood and Community Services Department.
It's good to see you again.
Nice to see you. All right. You want to start with the first
I'll
question?
start off. All right. We've all had the opportunity to review your resume. From your perspective, how does your background and experience prepare you to be the Chief of Police of Tacoma Department?
It really is a combination of accumulation of my 35 years of policing, to which I was very honored to serve the Tacoma Police Department for 30 and a half years in all ranks, to include the last almost 6 years as an assistant chief in both the Administrative Bureau and the Investigative Bureau, during which time we were able to accomplish a lot of great initiatives. Just as I was leaving, to put it back in a time frame and perspective for all of you, it was a time of the Ferguson event. We were looking at 21st century policing and how we would move forward with the pillars. So a good part of that, I had the opportunity, the newly created Office of Equity and Human Rights and Lamont Green and figuring out what Project Peace ended up being, which was a wonderful experience. Got to go through all of those series. We were working on the data-driven initiatives, so the open source data that we were working with the city to do. In fact, the last day that I was here was a presentation to the East Side on the open data initiative. So there's a whole lot of opportunities, initiatives that I had to do. I know it's in my bio, and we'll go through that. But I want to fast forward then to taking all of that experience and then saying, I want to be a police chief. I want to see if my leadership style works. I want that last position. And so I was fortunate enough to have the city of Tigard hire me. And so Tigard, Oregon sits right next to Portland. And though it's 55,000, it is in that metro area. So you get a lot of all the issues, even if it isn't in Tigard, you have to pay attention to it. For the last 4.5 years, I came into an apartment that was well established, that just needed to kind of move and be progressive, professionalize it, have a direction. So we set a strategic plan from start to finish, doing the deep dive, current state analysis. So you're teaching, you're bringing the department along. We had 6 initiatives that included the 21st century policing initiatives in there, and we started accomplishing a lot of stuff. Like any law enforcement agency, when George Floyd was killed, it reverberated across the country. And so even the city of Tigard and its residents were not immune to asking, is this going to happen here? Can it happen here? Are we structured? What is going to happen? So now we're in a pandemic though too. And so we're doing a lot of Facebook Live with the mayor, answering questions. How do we measure with 8 Can't Wait when we were 8 of 8? All of those things we got state accredited. So building up a professional organization, moving it forward, going through kind of a looking glass of how we measure, and feeling like we're still educating our community, we're still working. And then January 6th happened, 2021. and we had an officer-involved shooting and led to the death of a 26-year-old male. Domestic violence, but there was some mental health in there. We first line of duty or officer-involved death fatality in the history of that department. And we had Antifa come from Portland and absolutely destroy our downtown, our police department. Going through all of that process, communicating, being out in front, in the media, talking, even what I could say and what I couldn't say, because it's an outside entity doing the investigation, but trying to answer the questions, being responsive to the business owners who had damage to their businesses. So going through controversy, leading through it, being accessible, accountable, I've lived it. I know what it's like. I know what I would do in those situations. And I think that is 9 months of not knowing what the officers were going to do. It was handed off to the Attorney General's office. And so that very unknown, is the officers going to be charged? Did they do something wrong? To go to a grand jury process that they'd never ever experienced before, and walking them through that, going alongside them to have a non-true bill, so they were not deemed to be criminally liable for what had happened. And we're still healing. The community's still healing. That's still very much a process that was only done maybe 2 months ago. And so newly established Public Safety Advisory Board, because the city of Tigard, very much like the city of Tacoma, said we're going to be an anti-racist form of government. And so working as a director through that, first thing they started with was the Public Safety Advisory Board. We've met 22 times over this last year, and going through all of our policies, going through the use of force, the data, them asking questions, peeling that back. And while you may not ask for it, they're an invaluable group of people that are so engaged and being responsive and helping me. I've made some policy changes. I've taken their feedback. Sometimes I've said, I'm not going to do it at this time, but we have that dialogue. So take all of that together. I've been doing the job as a police chief. I know my voice. I know where policing is today. I feel very equipped, very experienced to be able to come in and lead my whole agency in the Tacoma Police Department.
So the Washington State Legislature has been very proactive this session, and they have enacted really sweeping reforms in policing. 2 bills in particular: House Bill 1310, which establishes permissible uses of force, and then also House Bill 1054, which establishes requirements for tactics and equipment. So Kathy, how do you feel that these 2 laws in particular affect the community and law enforcement in both challenging and beneficial ways?
It's not much different than what Oregon went through. So Oregon started their legislative session with 1,000 police reform bills. That is a lot. I was part of the Oregon Association of Chiefs of Police Strategic Legislative Work Group. I had 4 binders this thick of all the bills that were being proposed. The difference is that we were at the table. We were talking and explaining, hearing, perspectives of change and what it could do or would do to policing and how we police, both pros and cons. At the end of that session, there were 21 police reform bills to include a use of force, very, very robust, that actually was applied during our shooting because it came into effect 6 days later. Why I say that is, even though I've read the Washington ones, I've heard the chief's concerns, especially when you're talking about the difference between probable cause and reasonable suspicion. I've heard scenarios where that's played out, where people have gotten hurt because we did not feel we could respond or act because we didn't have probable cause. That's concerning. My understanding is we were not at the table during those discussions. So I know we're going to get into a legislative session. That's why I put it in one of my high priorities. Is can't control the legislative session. We should have a voice. Tacoma should have a voice. As one of the largest agencies in the city, we should be at that table being able to explain, is this the intended outcome that you want? Let's put this in play. The other thing that in any of this, you have to have your prosecutors, your attorney general at the table too, because what we learned in our officer involved shooting is we had the policies then for the new law, but what we didn't do is educate or find out how the prosecutor's office views those laws. So everybody has to be at the table so we have a clear understanding so that we can prepare our officers to apply the new legislative laws as they're intended and equip them. So I'm hoping that there's some changes. I'm hoping we can go back at the table and really talk about this. But I think it's important that all the police chiefs in this area have a voice in so that I'm talking to the elected officials, so you can ask questions and say, you know, this is I'm informing you. I'm not trying to sway you, but I will give you information so that when you go into your legislative session, you have as much information as you need to decide how you are going to vote.
Kathy, please explain your ability to work with and establish relationships with a wide range of diverse stakeholders and communities, as well as strategic partners, officials, colleagues, and the media.
Collaboration is the heart of everything that I do. I love, you know, problem solving with a group of people to come together. I don't have no problems leading, but it's far more fun when you can get a group of people together to attack a problem, solve things. So collaboration is key. A variety of it. I actually will go to the best time when I was a sector lieutenant on the east side of Tacoma, and we were dealing with gang violence was off the roof, and we worked with police, the schools, former gang members, faith-based leaders. We came up with a three-pronged approach on suppression, prevention, and intervention, and we worked together. At our first gang summit, and we're wondering, will anybody come? And it was a packed crowd. And so people who are listening in will hear me tell that story. And why I keep going back to that one is because once you've experienced the synergistic effect of working together and affecting change, it is powerful. And it will carry you into that next tough grow. When we take all of our collected knowledge and work on homelessness in Tacoma, I'm sure we'll come up with some great strategies, but it will take all of us to do that. The diverse groups that I've had is depending on, I've worked, especially CPAC was just created. Before I was an assistant chief, and so working with the Police Accountability Board, a lot of presentations, a lot of collaboration. I think they've evolved in their role and had a chance to listen in on some of the new applicants and how they're excited. So it's kind of fun. But and then of course you're talking about having conversations with the Black Collective, Minstrel Alliance, Rainbow Center, the Asian Pacific, Korean women. I mean, we are so diverse in the city of Tacoma. There are so many groups, the Latinx community, and each one has maybe a different perspective and different needs. And so you can't just say, well, I'm going to treat them all the same, but you have to have a voice and come to the table. And I'm quite comfortable and have done in the past is having those conversations and listening to the concerns of that particular group or organization.
Thank you.
Thank you. I forgot to mention I'm the executive liaison to CPAC, so that's probably pretty important.
It's good news as I knew that.
Describe a situation where you had to work closely with elected representatives who were upset with policing issues. How did you manage communications with them and the city manager and other affected parties?
So we're going to go to that officer involved shooting. So fast forward it, go back a little bit. Again, we're just talking globally about policing, George Floyd. I'm side by side with the mayor, why we're positioned that we are to, you know, professional organization, all of our policies, everything's going good. We're just educating our community. And again, the officer involved shooting. Trying to answer questions, get out in front of the media, coordinating with the prosecutor's office, very, very difficult. Lessons learned there. But, and I should say at that time, I'm also the assistant city manager, interim assistant city manager. So guiding the interim city manager through this process as well, along with the mayor. And what I did was, because it was our first one, and making sure that I knew Washington County's process is I had the district attorney come in a Zoom meeting and talk to the mayor, the city manager, and walk them through that. And that allowed the mayor to be in front of the cameras and talk about the process. So it wasn't just me saying, these are the steps that have to go. The mayor could talk and say, you know, here's the process, this is what it's going to happen, and be responsive. And I think that was very important for the mayor to be able to have that voice. And then as it's going, keeping them informed, it was a long process. Patients are thin, both for the officers that are involved, not knowing their fate, and also the community, and trying to be as responsive, even if it's, I'm not in control of the investigation, I know it's ongoing, and I know it's a concern of all of you. So I would say in light of where we are in policing is just being responsive to the issues at hand. And in particular, you can't get any more concerning than an officer involved shooting. And so, and being able to be out in front and be accountable. And I was accountable to the community who had damage to their property. I had a Zoom meeting to talk to them, and so they could yell at me or say what happened to their businesses. I explained my tactics, my capabilities, what I could and couldn't do in a smaller agency. Followed it up with going down in person by myself, not an entourage, and talking to the business owners, talking to the employees who may have asked questions like, what happened? Why did you not protect us? And the patrons that were there to support. And so you have to be very visible, accessible to and if people are willing to listen, or just for me to listen to them, goes a long ways. And I believe there was a lot of trust and equity built during that time.
Thank you.
Okay, Kathy, Tacoma Police Department civilian staff members are important contributors to the success of the department. How do you encourage and engage civilian staff members, and how do you balance their needs with those of the commission staff?
Their needs are no different or less than what the commission staff is. They are the backbone of our department, right? They're there every day supporting, making it run. And they want the same things that any other employee wants. A voice, to be heard, to be fair, to be impartial. All the things that procedural justice is that the community wants, employees want it too. And our non-sworn are an integral part. And at times we can forget. And you do have to put that on your dashboard. As I was thinking last night, so this is an epiphany. I mean, as you're going through this process and you're going, how bad are they hurting too? I talked a lot so far about the pain that the officers are feeling not supported. Imagine the non-sworn, they're sitting there going every day, and that they're hurting just as much if they're feeling devalued by the community or not supported. So in building trust and confidence with our sworn, I cannot overlook our non-sworn and see how they're doing and checking in. And so they're critical, and having those conversations and making time for them is as important.
Thank you.
Okay, for you personally, what have been fulfilling and satisfying aspects about policing in the community, and how would you envision this in Tacoma?
In general, the body of work is what I've enjoyed. The evolution, the growth of me professionally, right? And just seeing how I have grown. I'm a lifelong learner, so kind of the study of the profession, and those tentacles outside of it, not just in policing, but and so I like learning. I like evolving and having these discussions. What I see in the future is when we're not the conversation, when we're not having these conversations about the police department, we're just talking about how we build a city, how we move it forward, whether it's in economic development, safety in general, meaning safety and health, and we're helping, but we're not the conversation. We're not in the media. That is success. That is happiness. When we're out there just being the guardians of the community, doing our job, but we're not the narrative.
Kathy, what are some specific strategies that you would use or have used in the past to attract more people of color and women into the police department, whether that's a civilian capacity or commission?
So I'll reflect on two different things. The first is before I left Tacoma, and as in charge of hiring and recruiting in the administrative bureau, we were thinking outside the box, and we decided as a group of women leaders in Washington, and it was mostly Western Washington. And in fact, I was the only one in the kind of the Pierce County region. Everybody else was in Seattle, Bellevue, in that area. And we did a women's recruitment day at the academy, and it was phenomenal. I mean, we had booths from so we weren't competing. We were just attracting, and it was just for women. Mothers came with their daughters, and, planting that seed. Others came thinking they were coming for their daughter, only to say, I want to get back into it. And they joined. Unfortunately, it was King County and not us. But it was coming together, supporting women. They could see women as tactical people that had canines, and just really opening that door. That we were very effective in hosting something like that, very different. In Tigard, the difference is when they look at you, and now in this day and age, this is a day and age of social media, and they don't want to come to the department. They want to see, what can I see in a snapshot in your department? The biggest feedback positive that I got was my Chiefs page, my transparency, what we're about. When I talked about the sanctuary city status and feeling welcome for our Latinx community, I had several Latinx applicants talk about how that spoke to them, and that was far more inclusive, that our Black applicants come, and the conversation, if they've made it to me, we're having the conversation of, what does it mean to be a guardian? And they would tell me that they feel connected and supported in the leadership that we have promoted in there. So it starts with, a leadership, because they've got to want to come to that organization. It's an employee market, right? So pretty much anybody can go anywhere. We're all hiring, and some are hiring more than others. So why do they want to come to Tacoma? Are we a professional organization? Are we stable? Is the city stable? Are we supported? Because they're not going to go somewhere where they're not supported. And so we have to create that environment first before we think about anything else. And then I think in our backyard, I'm a little biased that athletes, but I've always wanted to do this. I haven't done it, and I hope I do, is we recruit some of our athletes at universities, right? I was an athlete. I didn't know what to do. And 2 Tacoma officers recruited me and said, did you think about policing? No, I had not. 3 of the 4 women that we shared houses were all police officers, based on just that conversation, just planting a seed that said, did you ever even think about this? No, I had not. So there's opportunity still out there, but we got to make sure that we're a stable and supported organization before we're going to attract the people that we want, and to also say, no, thank you. We're not desperate. We're not going to lower our standards. And I don't think this is a good fit.
Okay, Kathy, this next question is a little bit longer. The city of Tacoma is beginning an in-depth transformation to become a truly anti-racist organization. Tell us about a time when you led a major transformation or change effort for an organization, and what were some of the challenges that you faced and some of the successes?
That is tough work. And thank you for what you do, because it's not easy. When we can say it and commit to it, but what does that look like? And so when your office was created and we were part of that think tank on what it looks like, it was messy. It was difficult. What does it look like to use an equity lens to transform? And nobody had a set answer. We were working collectively together, and we started that work. And then again, I left. So I commend you for probably being farther than we are where we are in Tigard. We're looking at that. What does that look like? And we as a leadership team, plus a diversity, equity, inclusion think tank, we're just doing that messy work now. So I would say, specifically when you're talking about the transformational of Tacoma, when we're talking about being an anti-racist government, that's what I got to talk about. And we're still going through that and what that looks like. One of the things that when you talk about learning is we recruit everybody in, right? And we make it a more diverse. But what do we do to keep people? Do they still feel welcome? And I've heard from our employees in Tigard where they go, yeah, you made it attractive and I came, but you did nothing to make me continue to feel welcome, to either embrace my cultural differences. So there's work to be done about microaggression. As you know, oftentimes when we want to show diversity, well, here's these officers, look how diverse we are. And I had a female person of color who's photogenic and just phenomenal. And so of course I want her on every poster. And she's like, I heard that she didn't want to do that anymore, that was part of microaggression. I don't want to be the poster person. I just want to be a cop. I apologized to her and said, I will never do that to you again. I did not know that I was re-traumatizing you or causing pain. So when you talk about, 1,000 cuts, you learn that. And so when you're in transformational, it's going to be messy. I don't think there is a blueprint. And it's got to be unique to the organization and the community, because everybody's on this journey. And sometimes you'll get pushback, and we as an organization have to do the right thing. And in Tigard, 80% predominantly white, they didn't like hearing about being an anti-racist government because they thought it was offensive. You're calling me, you're making it personal. And spending the time to educate our community, and this is systemic, this is processes, not your journey, but how can we become a welcoming? And so I can't say that I have success yet. We're still very much in the mix of things, but we're on the right path and we're doing the right thing. And I think that's the most important thing, is that you recognize it, you're making a step forward. So for transforming Tacoma, you don't want to lose that momentum, especially under policing, when the tide is turning a little bit, defunding is less, now crime is up, let's get more police. But let's not lose our focus of what we want this agency to be, both the department and the city, and not worry about the political wins, and do the right thing. And it's codified in a resolution. So hopefully we stay fast, and it doesn't matter what the politics do, and we do the right thing. And I'm hoping that I'm part of seeing what Transformation Tacoma ends up being.
Thank you.
So please tell us about your experience working with other department directors on city council goals and objectives, and what were the outcomes?
Yeah, as a leadership team, and we all know that police take a large part of the budget, but we're just one piece of the pie. And so there's a lot of things to do as far as infrastructure and moving this. And there's a lot of global initiatives. For us, it's homeless. I'm on that work group. DEI is another. Clean energy is another one. So we all have to come together and move the council goals as part of that. So the fun part is getting out of your lane and helping somebody else in a broader scope. And that is pretty rewarding. So much so that I thought about, did I want to transition into city manager, right? So as I kind of mentioned that I was an interim assistant city manager over public works, economic development, the library, and the police still. I'm still a police chief. I like working, with the directors, with the city manager, but I like and I know policing. So, but it valuable, it's team oriented. And again, at the risk of saying it too many times, when we're not the narrative and we're just here as one department director trying to move this city forward, that's my dream.
Thank you.
Okay. Many in the community believe that implicit bias is present in current police officers and practices. Do you believe this is true? Please explain why or why not.
We know it exists just in society. So I know, so to sit there and go, well, of course not in the police department. Implicit bias is everywhere. And we've learned that through our education about what really implicit bias is. And cynicism in the police department is always something you have to monitor. We see a lot of the dreads of society and negativity. We have gallows humor. How do we make sure that we don't lose ourselves in this process? We hire the best people, we hire the guardians, and how do we not lose them? And so sometimes we aren't our best at monitoring our own people's health, mental health. And again, the implicit bias is education, 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 but not the same PowerPoint, not the same mantra. It's got to look different in a lot of different areas, but you build upon it and give examples. Sometimes it's just a conversation in the shift briefing about a particular statement or comment, and you continue to reinforce what that is. Understanding that people are going to be defensive, because again, the one thing that I've learned is that the first thing you do is make it personal, and so you get defensive. And so getting it out of the person thing and saying, what's the right thing for the city, the organization, this police department? And this is not about you, but about the larger us, and working towards that. So it's just an education, and it's ongoing, but it's understanding that people will get defensive, understanding their journey is a little different, and fighting through that.
Thank you.
Okay, in light of the national protests against them, police officers are experiencing an all-time low in their morale and in the job satisfaction. How do you intend to address this in a way that restores pride in the workforce while still ensuring community concerns are addressed?
Number one critical issue. I know it exists here, but we've been challenged in all agencies. Just as a profession, right? You're under a microscope, you're devalued. It's hard to go do this job. And it's hard for me to turn around and tell everybody, go out there, do a good job, connect. And when they don't know, and I'm just talking about Tigard, when they don't know what the outcome of an officer involved shooting, or if people don't respect the profession. First time they've ever experienced, they used to wave and now they're waving with one finger. I mean, that weighs on you. That will do its toll if you do not acknowledge it. And so we all know, you are all leaders, and the most valuable, important thing to an organization is your people. Your people will not go out and do a good job if you do not value your people. And so telling the officers, sworn and non-sworn, that you are valued, that you are respected. It's going to be great that the chief does that, but they need to see it in the community. They need to feel it in the community. And some of our Tigard residents just drop gift bags off and let them know in different ways. One daughter on her birthday decided, I wanted to take my money and give it to the police officers. You can imagine how far that goes. And so taking a moment to acknowledge them, to let them understand that they're not alone, and that we'll do the right things. I will put the right policies. I will protect you. I will train you, but you will be supported. And going out in the community and providing that, and those examples. And the best thing that the officers can do is do what they do well and go help our community and do it in the right way that is expected of this community. And we'll make that tide turn. But that is a critical thing that needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Can I follow up? So how do you do that without, and still help the community feel heard with what their concerns are?
Absolutely. And it's getting to that at some point, if it's not us versus them, right? That your figuratively, your values, your concerns are valid. And we as an organization need to address it. But at the same time, there is a majority of men and women who do this job and they do it well. And so perhaps, not painting all of us with a broad brush, just like we wouldn't want to paint our community with a broad brush. And that's going to take conversations, and that's going to take some understanding and some proof, right? We've got to live our values, and we've got to show it and prove it to the community. And I would ask the community to give a little grace, give a little time. For whoever chief that comes in, it's going to take a little time, but we're going to set the right pieces in place and work with the community on what that looks like. And hopefully we will see the change. But if I can get rid of the us versus them as fast as I can, that is only going to be healthy for the entire city and all of our communities.
Okay, we're crossing the finish line here.
Oh, hey.
Is there any additional information regarding your qualifications that you want to share with us, or do you have any questions for us?
No, I think the one thing that I try and that maybe in some people's back of their minds, maybe not all of you, maybe somebody tuning in, the pros and cons of coming from this agency, right? So let me just acknowledge that or expound a little bit on it. You all are sitting here and have been in this bad time, right? Both social justice, COVID, you probably can't see the beauty of Tacoma. I got to leave for 5 years, go to a wonderful place, but you come back and there's so much good, so many things that have been done right that we need to embrace first. And just reminding people that the history that I have is a proud history. It's not a perfect history. And I acknowledge on that reconciliation process that as a 30-year member of the Tacoma Police Department, that though I intended not to, I may have caused harm, especially to some of our marginalized community, especially when I did a lot of effort in gang suppression, drugs, right? And, but if you see beyond that and see that I am who I am and what I bring to the table, I'm hoping that you embrace my roots in here and what I see Tacoma, when it was the most violent city per capita back when I started, to where it is today, and the growth that we've had, that is a plus and an added value along with my entire body of work. I would like that to be taken into consideration. With that, that's all I have to say. I appreciate your time.
We do have a few more minutes if anybody has any follow-up questions.
Oh, sure, go for it.
Well, Kathy, since you mentioned homelessness several times in
Yes.
your commentary, and I read back through your cover letter here and don't really see you kind of pull out the work you've been doing in Tigard and perhaps some ideas that you have. And I always want to tap into people's thought processes around that issue. So I'm just interested to hear kind of a reflection from you on how you see the police department to continue to be a partner with neighborhood and community services in addressing that issue and how we might shift as we go forward.
Yeah, you know, Allison, it's the forefront of all cities, even something as small as Tigard now experiencing it downtown. Our unhoused people were displaced. I think what we saw is how much they used the library, how much they had areas in the daytime. And when all that shut down and bathrooms in our, McDonald's and restaurants and stuff like that, they're all of a sudden among us. And people are in mental health crisis. They have their substance use disorders. And there's a divide in the community on what should be done. There's those that want the police and get them out of here. I don't want to see them. And there's others that are very compassionate. They don't want to hear that it is not criminal to be homeless, that Martin v. Boise said that there is no enforcement that you will take. And so some are frustrated. They still think it is a police matter. So education, education, education. So there's a great partnership though from neighboring what you guys are doing and making sure you're safe and your folks are safe and how we can partner. We'll deal with the criminal behavior. And sometimes it's criminal and sometimes it's behavior. We may go and do a welfare check on somebody who's walking down the street with a baseball bat, not a crime, but it concerns people. And are you okay? Do you need any resources? So we still have a touch point and an ability to check on people. But I think there are a frustrated group that still want to see police as the answer to this. And we're 24/7. So whatever we do in alternative models, it's not going to cover 24/7. So again, how can the police be that voice out there in compassion with the tools, the crisis intervention, getting your mental health folks out there, and then build that model of a phased approach. But I see us being, invaluable partnership. But again, it's the entire city working to get these folks, our most vulnerable people, in permanent shelter.
Thank you.
Anything else from the panel?
One of the responses that you gave, you mentioned making time, and I think it was in relation to commission and non-commissioned staff, but it also goes to community engagement and building relationships. So how do you do that? How do you plan to make time to do these things?
It's you go into it with giving up yourself in some ways, right? It's 14-hour days. It's weekends. It's okay. I love doing that. You're just going to give that kind of time. I will tell you, it looks different. When we were doing a public safety levy, and I wanted to inform the voters so that they could decide whether or not they wanted to vote for more officers, I went to a bunco night and talked about it to a group of women. And so nothing is too small or too personal to sit there and talk about issues. It doesn't always have to be the big forums. I'm happy to do those, but I think sometimes the honest discussions in smaller groups are going to happen, and they need to happen. So the sooner I get the executive staff group put into place and be out there in the public, and again, whatever stage the community wants. Go to the East Side neighborhood, all the neighborhood councils, going to introducing myself, going to, again, our formal diverse groups, introducing myself, or reintroducing and saying hello again. But just, it is hopefully those authentic. And then there's the tough work, right? You got to get into the work, and they expect action. And that's going to be a different conversation. And let's get down to the heart of things. But just being introducing and welcoming and hearing your concerns, it just takes time. Mm-hmm. And my family jokes that I would come back to the state and see me less. And that's okay. That is okay.
So I really appreciate you acknowledging some of the concerns that people have about you
Yeah.
coming from TP.
Of course. Yeah.
How do you talked about it a little bit, but I think that in terms of us transforming,
Yeah.
Where do you see where's the first things, or what are the things that you're like, no, we need to address this part first to really set a tone for whatever your administration would look like?
Clear expectations that are posted on a newly created transparency page, hopefully, because that'll get out to the audience. Working with design and communications and media, how do we get that word out and to set that tone? So you got to be very visible. Again, we're still very much in the virtual world, so we have to kind of capitalize on that type of outreach, I think, and being accessible. Still asking if it ends up being me, and it will probably disappoint some people, right? They want to see something different, some change, and so they're going to ask, are we going to get the same old thing? And we want change. I've got to be able to take time to answer that, and then show them, why am I different? Why should you embrace what I have to say or where I'm from? I am only a portion of a walk of life. I am a female in a very male dominant profession. I am part of the LGBTQ community, and that's a small fraction, but I'm still white privileged. And so I understand all those dynamics, and all we can do is be open, have authentic conversations, and say, will you give me a chance? Because I will give you, and I will open up. And we'll see if the community is ready for that. And they may not be, and that's okay too.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just make an observation?
Yes,
So
you
I'm
may.
non-commissioned, so I don't have any stake in that, but I hear a lot, and people come up and talk to us. We're kind of a safe office.
Yeah.
You got a very wounded department right now,
I know.
very wounded. That's going to be a tough one.
Yeah.
A really tough one. And I really think you need to address, whoever comes in needs to address that, because you're not going to get, I don't even know the word I want, but you got to let them know.
Yeah.
And I like the expression that you gave about painted with a broader paintbrush for everybody. They don't need to fall under that.
Right.
They need to be recognized for who they are.
And I know that because, as I said, because I see the pain just in policing in general.
Mm-hmm.
So tenfold on what is happening here, and the instability, and things are not, that the community hasn't had time to heal. The officers haven't had time to heal, and that will take time. But you're right. My strength, and you know it, is my compassion for people, both inside the department and outside. The human element is the most wonderful and the most exhausting part of this. It's who we are. And to be able to forge through that and help people get through that pain. I've been on peer support. I've been out there in officer involved shootings and line of duty deaths. And I know the pain, I know the job, and being able to navigate us through that, but with the community, again, trying to get them out of this us versus them is not easy, but it's so important. And really understanding when you say, you know, you live in the city, what does it mean to be a guardian versus a warrior? What does it mean to be interactive and care about the community versus bad guys and robbers and stuff, right? You know, where you are, you know, I'm going to date myself a little bit, but, you know, a few good men, right? And you have Jack Nicholson saying, you want me on that wall, you need me on that wall. We need to be in the community and we need to be engaged, but we got to feel trusted. Like if I'm apprehensive because you may not want me there, so I'm going to hold back unless a call takes me that. We've got to meet halfway and say, we're going to welcome you into the community. You got to prove it. But so everybody's doing a little bit of that trust balance, and it won't be today or tomorrow, but that's what we got to work towards.
You can only go up from here.
Okay.
I will say that.
Duly noted.
Well, thank you for joining us, Kathy, and
My pleasure.
taking the time to answer the panel's questions. And thanks to the panel for their good questions.
Yeah, I know how exhausting it is and the time it takes. So thank you. All of you, I do appreciate it.
We are out of time for today, but I invite you to join us this afternoon for an in-person meet and greet at the Greater Tacoma Convention Center. Also, you can join us online for a panel of community members who will be asking candidates questions as well. That is on Zoom and TV Tacoma starting at 5:30. We'd love also to hear your feedback about the candidates. So please go to cityoftacoma.org/police chief recruitment for surveys you can complete on each individual candidate. Again, would really appreciate your feedback, and thanks again for attending today.